speak earlier, a couple weeks ago, and she fired me up. And then all I could think about was, I got to get her in our town. So, but before we have Katherine come forward, I would like you to please stand, and Attorney Robert Banner there, look at that shirt. Look at that shirt he got on. I got one. He's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Shall we? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So much.
Thank you.
You are going to enjoy this if you like getting information. Anybody like getting information? True information? Real information, not fake? Well, would you please give a warm welcome to constitutional lawyer Katherine Henry from Hudsonville, Michigan.
The spotlight really is on me, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on you.
You mentioned I didn't have notes last time, but, well, literally the spotlight's on me this time, so I figured I should be a little bit better prepared. And I drink large amounts of water all the time, so. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Am I the only speaker? Is it just me? Holy cow, that's humbling. Then really, thank you for coming just to hear little old me come and talk to you about the Constitution and some other stuff going on in our government. That means a lot to me. I don't know how much, if any, you have been told about who I am. So I assume you might need a little bit of information? Yeah, okay. Right there. So first of all, it's a good building to be in because I'm a Christian. So I feel at home already. I'm also a wife and a mother. I have 4 children. One is hopefully back there still having fun. Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up. And she's our youngest. I have a 16, almost 17-year-old son. Wow, time goes, doesn't it? And I know, he's almost 17. You feel my pain. That's okay, because I have one who is 17 and one who's 19. So, yeah. I know I look like I'm 20, right? That's my husband, who's the old guy. So I'm also, I'm a homeschooling mom. I don't homeschool all of them. Well, one's in college. And I don't homeschool the high schooler anymore. I did for 4 years. But I do homeschool the cute little one that's back there. And today's lesson was staying awake while doing your schoolwork in the car. So she passed. I actually failed that lesson, which is why it was a good thing I wasn't driving. So, also, just to give you context, I was actually, okay, so you know you're from Michigan when? So I was born way up here, past the Portage Canal in Hancock. And then, when I met my husband, I was living in Midland. And then I moved to Belding. And now I live in Hudsonville. So I think I about got my hand correctly there. But I did spend my childhood growing up in Florida when my parents got divorced. So I lived in Orlando for 12 years. And then I moved with my dad to Minnesota for 10 years. So I have been back now since 2008. Wow, doesn't time fly? Seems like it was yesterday. But I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner since 2008 here in the state of Michigan. And I'm someone who, I forget exactly how my favorite saying goes now. It's on a plaque in my house. But basically, if you're going to be someone who wants to complain about something, you better be willing to do something. Don't sit there and run your mouth or be a Facebook keyboard warrior. be willing to, put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. So that's the background from which I come to you today. So also, I guess a very important piece about, because I started off with that I'm a Christian toddler. I may be a kindergartner in my faith. I didn't really grow up knowing what it meant, who God really was, what Jesus really did for us, any of those things. And so I'd like to be able to tell you so much more about our government in context of my faith, but since I've been studying the law a lot longer than I've really had an in-depth study of the Bible, I can't quite have an equal footing in both of those. So why am I involved? Involved in what? Well, that's kind of a chicken and the egg. I'll tell you why first. Who knows where you were on September 11th, 2001? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so if you were alive then you almost can always know where you were. So this might seem like a silly question to some of you then, but who knows where you were on March 12th at 11:15 p.m. this year? I was in front of my TV. We almost never watch the news, but I was in front of my TV. Luckily, my kids were sleeping, and I was just me and my husband and the dog. And I was yelling at my TV because Gretchen had just announced that she was closing schools for 3 weeks. And so some people thought of that, oh, it's just going to be a 4-week spring vacation then. My school district that I was doing restorative justice in had the 4th week was our spring break. So for us, we knew it was at least 4 weeks. So some people were happy about it, kind of looking at it like a snow day. A lot of us knew that it was not going to be good for the kids that we serve and that we work with. I knew from that moment, though, I knew it was so much bigger than that. So from the moment they were saying, don't wear masks, wear masks, don't wear masks, wear masks. And, my husband at first went to the post office and, they were talking about being careful about what you were touching and making sure you used hand sanitizer. And don't get me wrong, I am a little bit of a germaphobe. But like I said, I have 4 kids, and one of them's a boy. So with that comes a little bit of common sense and relaxing of what you're worried about. He's still alive, thank God. He's a boy. They tend to do things that are dangerous that can almost kill them on a regular basis. So when my husband went into the post office one day, I want to say it was late March, and came back and he was like, where's the hand sanitizer? And I was like, I'm going to be honest. I grabbed his hand and I licked it. I was like, there you go. Fine. You're not going to get the COVID. I just saved you. Not that I mock it. It's real. That's not what, I'm not here to tell you COVID's not real. It's a real thing. It really does kill people, but it doesn't kill as many people as the flu. And even if it were the bubonic plague, what's been happening is not okay. So, I guess that goes into, well, what has happened? Well, we've had our schools closed. We saw all of our entire state shut down, right? We've seen state and local government functions closed. We've seen things like NA and AA and counseling and anger management and marriage counseling services and group therapy completely cease. A lot of those aren't even still up and running yet. We've seen places like American Legion and I don't know, I can't even, like everything that we know in our lives has been shut down or stopped or changed significantly in some way. And I don't know about you, but I love my family, but like I said, I didn't really grow up knowing a lot about God and what Jesus did for us. And so I've done a lot of my growing and leaning on in my church family. And so for me to not have the marriage counseling or things like, we have this really cool class called Third Option that teaches you ways of handling conflict really in general, but also in marriage. And a program called Beyond Mentoring that helps you learn how to just do things differently in your marriage and with your family. And we just had a ton of programs, women's Sunday school and a variety of other things that I actually picked that church based on all those offerings. And so when COVID happened and all those things went away, I'm just one tiny example of someone who was like, oh my gosh, where are all the things that I have gone to lean on, the people that I've gone to when I, need to have, another session with our marriage counselor? Because did I mention we have 4 kids? And I own a business. So, there's just things you always need to be able to look to others for guidance and for help. And so, yes, COVID does kill, but depression kills, and alcohol addictions kill, and drug addictions kill, and domestic violence kills, and child abuse kills. And I tell you that as an attorney who has represented people in domestic abuse situations. Many times I've represented kids in abuse and neglect cases as a lawyer guardian ad litem. In Minnesota, when I did that work, at the time, if you were 10 and over, you got your own attorney. So I've done that work as a child's attorney, as the lawyer guardian ad litem, as a separate role, as just guardian ad litem, and you name it, I've been involved in ways that when kids are hurting. I've done a lot of different dispute resolution. So I have the lens, and you often maybe wonder why God has you in different things or in your life, or you feel like, gosh, I don't know why I'd be doing so many different things or whatnot. And so looking back, it'll kind of come together for you. But I've done a lot of different mediations. I've done child abuse and neglect mediation. I've done adult guardianship mediation and civil rights and general civil and divorce, a lot of divorce mediation, restorative justice, and that's what I've been doing work in the elementary school. So kids can learn the skills of working through their problems and creating a resolution that works for everyone, where the victim has a voice and the offender has some responsibility and some say, and everybody can work together. And we learn basic concepts that help to make us responsible adults later on. So fast forward that, we saw all those things be taken away, right? We saw kids who have IEPs or 504 plans, special needs, not really receive the services that they were supposed to be receiving. And for some, if you don't have a child with special needs, I do, but if you don't have a child with special needs who needs that extra something, maybe it's your child somewhere on the autism spectrum and they need ABA therapy 3 times a week. Many of you might not know what that is, but I'll tell you it's just called a lifesaver for a parent who has a child with that need. And so and that's something that's a lot of physical, there's a lot of sensory stuff, so you take that out of the life of a child who needs it, then what are they left to do? Oh, can they go to the library? Well, no, those were closed. Can they go to a park? Well, it was still winter in Michigan, and no, we were told we couldn't even go outside. Can they go to their church? Nope, that part of their life is gone too. Can they go see their friends? Nope, they're not allowed to do that. What about grandma's house on Easter? Nope, we were told we couldn't do that. So that goes to the why. Why did I get involved, and what happened? Our society, really, it's not stuff that's, a lot of people think that this is stuff that it's shocking and it's never happened before. No, I'm actually glad this happened, and I'll tell you why. Because God put it on fast forward, because so many people have been becoming increasingly comfortable or okay with seeing the destruction of our society and how things in our schools have been happening, and how we've been attacking people who choose, or ostracize people who choose to homeschool, for example, or to see how politicians are not held accountable for the promises they make when they're running for office, or government officials are allowed to not follow the government principles that are set before them, things like that. Just all kinds of things, right, that we've seen. And I believe strongly that God is using all of this and using Michigan as a prime example to show how obviously stupid it has all become and how we need to wake up. Because if you can look at what's happening here in Michigan and still think the government is A-okay and we're just supposed to keep blindly following everything that they do, there may not be help for you. I mean, quite honestly. So most people that have been, let's say, in the middle, right? We always have the far left and the far right, and we have the middle. Although for you, I should have said far left and far right. Anyway, so the people in the middle, per se, are the ones that don't like to make a lot of waves, you know, because most of us don't like to fight. I'm an attorney, and any of you who have seen any of my videos or whatever, you might think, well, this person writes a lot of briefs, and she does a lot of court arguing, and she has 4 kids, and she's still married, so clearly she likes to argue. I actually don't. It's exhausting. I hate arguing. I am really good at it. In fact, I don't think I've ever met somebody that I felt was better at arguing than I am, because God gave me a lot of gifts, and now I'm starting to see how they come into play. But man, would he give me a vacation too? In fact, I'm looking at the back of my phone over there, which is a beach. I keep thinking, I'm gonna get there someday. But it's all in God's timing, right? So in looking at what happened, I think it was all put on fast forward, because that way people just start to go, whoa, okay, there really is a problem, and we can't deny it anymore, and we don't have time to get used to it. And so what is our government telling us? Well, this is the new normal. Just get used to it. The whole thing is the new normal. So I don't know, that makes me want to throw up every time I hear the new normal. And I'm okay with change, don't get me wrong. Did I mention I have 4 kids? Things change, right? I love the snuggly, hold them, you know, they don't talk backstage, and all of them are out of that, and all of them think they're teenagers. Did I mention I have a 6-year-old? But they all think they're teenagers. That's just part of parenting. I'm used to change. What I don't like is change that's not healthy, change that's not, I guess, ordained by God, change that's not good for us. And just freedom to change doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, and it doesn't mean society as a whole should support it or go along with it.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but along with having, I have my Bible on my phone, and that I really like, because there's a lot more pages than the Constitution, so I can find things easier on there. But as far as our state and federal constitutions go, there's some really cool stuff in here. So this goes to the why. Why should any of us be involved? Why am I involved? So the preamble to our United States Constitution says that we, the people of the United States, and I won't read all of it to you, but we, the people of the United States, in order to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. So there are a few other provisions in there, but this one is constantly ignored, and we're told that God has nothing to do with government, right? We're told that's what the First Amendment is all about, which, man, someday you guys will have to invite me up for a First Amendment talk, because that's not at all what it says. But it says right in here, blessings of liberty. Where do we get blessings from?
Right.
We get blessings from God. That's the only place we get blessings from. Now, our state government, they made it a little bit more clear, which I like. I like being clear. So it says in the preamble of our state constitution that we, the people of the state of Michigan, grateful to, capital A, Almighty, capital G, God, for the blessings of freedom, and earnestly desiring to secure these blessings undiminished to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. Now, I kind of left out a few of the provisions in our U.S. Constitution preamble as to why we created our form of government, but in our state constitution, that's it. That's that one sentence. It's all about our blessings of freedom that are given to us by God. We created a government for that purpose and for that purpose alone. We didn't create a government to tell us what to do. We didn't create a government to protect us from every virus or scary thing that's out there.
Right.
we created a government to secure our blessings. Oh, you are cute. Can I take you home? Oh, you found somebody that's going to take you home. Okay. Like I said, I missed that stage. So why else did I get involved? Well, oaths of office. We've all heard that you take an oath of office when you do most anything, right? Yeah. So in our U.S. Constitution, Article 6, it helps when I go to the correct article. It says that, well, instead of trying to find it, I'll just tell you what it says. It's Article 6. You can check me if you don't believe me. That any person who is basically in one of the executive, legislative, or judicial branches and serving as an official in that role has to swear an oath to uphold and support the U.S. Constitution. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So the funny thing is, just side note, I've had some people recently, I'd never heard this before, but for maybe the last 3-4 weeks. I've had some people recently tell me that by swearing an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution, that somehow means that you're pledging allegiance to someone other than God. And to them I said, did you read the Constitution? Because it says we get these blessings of liberty and freedom from God, so we're doing this because God gave us this and we're being responsible with what he gave us. But okay, so for whatever that's worth, I believe in God. And I believe that God wants us to, well, Romans 13, obey government and all that other fun stuff. We can't do that if we don't have a system of government in place. And so we have to uphold the system of government we put in place. But so the state constitution, Article 11, Section 1, now that requires any person who's a public officer to swear to uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions, because of course it's important that our state constitution has some meaning as well. Well, from the moment schools were closed down, by the way, Article 8 of our state constitution, the whole thing's about education. It's kind of an important deal. We really shouldn't just be closing school because we're afraid. In fact, I wasn't going to mention it here, but at this point anyway, but I'll probably mention this a few times. Some of you have probably heard 2 Timothy 1:7. For God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So should we be closing schools for 3-4 weeks because of fear? No, it was never a good decision. Should we be careful? Should we be watching and paying attention? Yes. Well, the data always told us from day one kids were not the main people who got COVID-19 in the first place. So not sure why we closed the schools, which then left children to go home to, say, their disabled relatives or neighbors or grandparents or others who did not work. And so we're putting them more at risk when they're the ones that are more likely to get COVID-19 in the first place. Sorry, I love common sense almost as much as I love God, so I just, can't help myself sometimes. So anyway, we have the oaths of office, and when you close schools, and then, I didn't even start talking about closing our all the businesses are closing, right? And when you close the businesses, and people are short on income, and then, so you have financial struggles, even though we probably already had financial struggles to begin with. A lot of people in Michigan were already financially hurting. And then you have the AA and the anger management and the marriage counseling and the group therapy, and then special education children's services and needs are not being met. And then your children are all at home with you when most parents in Michigan do not homeschool. And they're not used to having their children at home with them. You have all the stressors in the whole world. And if you look, even the World Health Organization, which I'm not really fond of at this point in time, even they will say that domestic violence and child abuse skyrocket anytime you have any one of those factors increase. And because the way our government chose to breed fear, an environment of fear, and shut down our entire state based on that fear, Then we had all those other things increase, but how would we ever know about the increase in abuse and neglect for children? Because every single one of the mandated reporters that would normally be in their lives, their basketball coaches and their youth leaders and their teachers and the bus drivers and the lunch ladies and the crossing guards and everybody else, was no longer allowed to get within 6 feet of them. Well, in fact, everybody was told to just stay home completely. And a little bit of Zoom here and there doesn't really catch those kinds of things. A lot of times it's seeing a kid face to face and going, something's just off today. What is going on? How can I be there for you? So, and it's not just kids. We have adults, obviously, that are in bad situations. I had an adult reach out to me that was talking about how she had been taking her child out. This is still when it was really cold out. She was taking her child to an empty church parking lot. There should never have been an empty church parking lot, at least on days that there's worship. But anyway, but the church was closed, and so she would go there every day with her kid, and they would just do anything in the church parking lot. Why? Because they had an abusive home, and she had nowhere, literally nowhere else to go. And a police officer came and saw her there one day and threatened her with a citation for violating an executive order and told her she had to go home. Well, is that not a sign of a broken society? Those stories started to wear on me very heavily. In fact, that I first heard in March because that was in my mind when I was emailing all of the state reps and senators that I knew personally and texting them and calling them April 5th, but April 1st was actually the first time, April 1st and 2nd, and then I got wind that they were really considering extending the state of emergency. I was like, guys, this is already unconstitutional. But it scares people when you tell people something's unconstitutional, right? Anytime you talk about the Constitution, people, we're not experts in that. Well, we need to be. Hence the Constitution Day celebration that we're here for today, right? We all need to make sure that we're up on the Constitution. And I, for one, had hardly even cracked this book, the Michigan State Constitution, before all this happened. Shame on me. But I thought I was on the right path, and I'll tell you what, between these two documents right here, the U.S. and the Michigan Constitutions, they need to be the second and third things you read after you're in your Bible. Yeah. Because it's the only way you're going to be able to do anything to protect yourself or those that you love. So sometimes I get myself on tangents and I don't know where I'm going, and sometimes I get to come back. So I'm just going to kind of, maybe it'll come back to me where I was in terms of my talking there to you, but what have I been doing about all of this? So it's really hot here. Whew. Yeah. Whew. Okay. I mean, it's Michigan, and yesterday I was wearing a parka, and today I was starting with shorts, and then I thought I'd end the day in between, but you never know. So, anyway, I was telling you I was contacting the legislators. So I was reaching out to them to say it's not only unconstitutional, but it's not okay. You can't do it. Do not extend the state of emergency. And I have some really good friends in some good places, and luckily, my friend Randy Bishop listened to me and got me on his radio station. First time I think I'd ever been on the radio, quite frankly, I think was his station in my whole life. I don't think I'd ever been on the radio for any reason. And I called him up, and by the way, just so you know, I actually hate public speaking. Absolutely hate it. I don't know that I would consider it one of my gifts that God's given me, but so long as I'm on his mission, I've been having people show up, so I must be doing something right here. And that's all that matters, is I'm on his mission, not mine. So anyway, I called into Randy's show, and I was like, actually, no, that's right. Randy asked me to be on his show, because we've known each other for a few years, and he saw my email that I had sent out, and he said, you got to tell my listeners about this. And I said, yeah, sounds great. Okay, I guess somebody's got to. So I did. And that got me fired up to get on a couple other radio stations across the state. And we were making some noise, but it wasn't enough. As you guys all know, they extended the state of emergency until April 30th. And literally just a couple of days before that, about 36 hours before the people started speaking at the Capitol on April 30th, I got connected with the American Patriot Council, and they were putting on a rally, the first in-person rally at the Capitol. And I didn't even like being on the radio when no one could see me, but there I was being presented with the opportunity to talk to potentially thousands of people in Michigan April weather. I mean, what couldn't be better than that? Right. So there I went, and I was able to somehow keep a captive audience of a lot of armed people, by the way, so I must have really been saying something good, because they could have gone at any moment, for 22 minutes, telling them about the science and the math and the data that I had been talking with an expert immunologist and epidemiologist, Dr. Martin Dubrovik, who's from right here in Michigan, and I didn't even realize that when I first started reading his stuff that he was putting out, but then had the opportunity to meet with him in person. And then telling them about the law. And again, I didn't focus on the Constitution because I didn't want to scare people. I wanted to give them the knowledge they needed, and mostly I was trying to speak loud enough that the people behind me in the state capitol were actually listening and hearing, you better not extend that state of emergency, and if and when you don't, any executive order is going to be illegal at midnight tonight, and we don't have to follow it. And that's exactly what happened. It was illegal from that point on. It was always unconstitutional. But it was illegal from that point on, and yet we didn't have any state reps or senators walking out the doors of the Capitol May 1st saying, hey, open your business, go back to church, go back to school, do all those things that you need to do, because these executive orders are null and void. No, in fact, what they not only didn't do that, but what they're not telling you is that they passed Senate Bill 858 in both the House and the Senate, locking us out of the doors of the Capitol, by the way, which is in direct violation of, I'm pretty sure, Article 4, Section 20 of our state constitution that requires the doors of the legislature to stay open unless the safety of the public is necessary to close them. While we were kept like sardines as 300, 400, 500 people were packed in the corridors of the right outside the, oh my gosh, all my words, House of Representative chambers. And so I'm pretty sure if COVID was going to get us, it was going to get us there, right? Because we didn't have a lot of personal space. We certainly didn't have 6 feet in between each person. And it felt just like right here, because you fit that many people into any enclosed space like that, and we certainly didn't have the air on that day. It was a little hot. Yeah. So anyway, while they were there, keeping us locked out, they passed Senate Bill 858, and luckily, Gretchen saved us that day. She saved us from signing that into law. Because what that bill did, I don't know if you remember now, but back then it was not a legal requirement to wear a mask. And back then, the businesses were not legally, well, they're not really legal, anyway. The businesses were not being told that they had to enforce that mask requirement. And we weren't told that the 6-foot social distancing thing was a thing, right? These were all suggestions even by her. And so what the legislature did back then, there were roughly 56 executive orders in place at that time. We have a little bit more than that right now. They took 29 of those executive orders and codified them completely. Whole thing, just signed them into law, adopted them, and then added on top of that, that businesses would have to, well, first of all, that people would have to wear masks when they went in public, and that businesses would have to enforce that upon the people, and that you'd have to have the 6-foot social distancing requirement. Our Republican-led legislature that's playing this partisan game against our Democrat governor was the first one to try to do that to us, and she saved us from that. And she told us why. She told us because it was unconstitutional, and it was in a variety of ways. Funny thing is, she forgot about that and then made a whole bunch of executive orders that did all that in the end anyway. So, so that goes into, again, what I've been doing. I then decided I really have to educate the public. The public needed to know the truth, because clearly no one in government was going to tell us. In fact, I had some strong conservative leaders, good Christian men that I had been looking to for basically as mentors for the last several years. Some of them I had been working closely with. Some of them were in politics, some in law, some whatever. And they were, well, one of them even called me up the morning of May 1st because I had made a post on Facebook. I hate Facebook. But as part of educating the public, I had put a 2-sentence post, something to the effect of, the executive orders are now, null and void as of midnight tonight, and there's nothing more, so go about your lives, right? And I got an angry phone call about that. Angry phone call from a good conservative Christian lawyer who started off by being mad that I told people that they were free from these executive orders. And by the end of the phone call, he agreed that I was legally correct, but that's just not how the way it works. I don't care how it works, because how it works is broken. And I ran for state rep a few years back based on the premise that what we were doing wasn't working, and I meant what I said then, and that's when I met the two guys that I was thinking of right now in this example, and I mean it today. It doesn't work. And quite frankly, I don't have respect for any of our state reps or senators anymore because not a single one of them has stood on the steps of the Capitol telling us that God did not give us a spirit of fear. And we are not supposed to fear the coronavirus, and we're not supposed to throw away the Constitution. And by the way, we actually made our state constitution to secure the blessings of freedom given to us by Almighty God. We did not get them from a governor or from a Supreme Court. Not a single one of them has done that, and I have considered many of them friends, and I've looked up to many of them for years. I will not door knock or talk in favor of any of them anymore. None of them deserve it. I don't care if they're afraid of being the one. Obviously, I'm the one. In fact, I've recently heard, this is probably more so for people that might be watching on Facebook than people in the audience, but I'd recently heard something in conjunction with an event that's supposedly going on next Tuesday at the Capitol, which I don't hardly know anything about, that my name's being thrown around with that, and I'm involved in it, and it's the people, the attorneys and individuals, the group of people that helped me write my speeches and my briefs that are involved with it, and I was like, excuse you? Just to be clear, there's one guy who helped me write my speeches and my briefs. That's it. I would love a team of people that are standing up to do the right thing. But I have not had, I take that back. I had one attorney way back when I was spending my Mother's Day. That's what happens when you don't take a day off because you're fighting for freedom, right? People in the military can do it, so can I. I sent out letters to every single police agency, sheriff's office, prosecuting attorney, and city attorney's office, and it took weeks of volunteers working with me to compile the email addresses because there is not one database available to the general public as it should be. And so Mother's Day, I finally got to send the majority of those out, and in that letter, it was an 11-page letter telling them how it was illegal and unconstitutional for them to enforce these executive orders. I don't care what the Attorney General says, I don't care what the governor says. If the I'm just following orders excuse didn't work in World War II, why should it work now? Because that's how it starts. So anyway, I did have an attorney from a town not too far away from me, and he had contacted me at some point, seeing some of my videos or something. I don't quite remember the details now, but he agreed to sign on to this letter. He is the only attorney that has signed on to anything. And no other attorneys have to help me draft this stuff. So if there's anybody to blame, I'll take all the blame, because I'm gonna take them all down, every single last one of them. So if you think that the legislature is behind me in any of this, or the courts, or the governor, I don't think anybody would think the governor is behind what I'm doing. But it's not the case. So my goals have been to educate the public, to hold the legislature accountable, because what they did from day one was not okay. In fact, they should have realized that on March 10th, when the governor first declared the state of emergency, before she even shut down the schools, they should have had their eyes open And they should have realized, there's too much stuff in those two laws. That Emergency Powers of Governor Act and that Emergency Management Act, those have some bad things in there. We should probably do something about that. And even if they waited to see what she started to do, then when they started to see that she was doing the things that the law allowed her to do, but the Constitution did not, they should have stood up then. They don't get kudos for voting on April 30th, along with that other horrible bill, to also then bring a lawsuit against her, to then tell us, the Michigan people, you need to sit and wait before you exercise your God-given rights because the courts need to sort it out first. How many here get your rights from court? Raise your hand here if you get your rights from Governor Whitmer. The legislature? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Whew! We're going to get you help, but no, we didn't get our rights from any of them. What about the U.S. Supreme Court? Anybody get your rights from the U.S. Supreme Court? No. We get all of our rights from God. So why should we have to wait to exercise them in accordance with the governing document we put out, by which, in Romans 13, he's telling us to obey the governing authority. That's the governing authority. We, the people in the United States, are the governing authority. So we have a duty. It also says in Romans 13:7 that you have to give somebody what is owed to them, right? If you owe them taxes, pay them taxes. If you owe them respect, pay them respect. We don't owe it to a governor to follow her when she's violating our laws and our Constitution. We do owe it to every United States citizen and every Michigan resident to follow the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Michigan to the T. We owe it to each other. We are violating our biblical principles if we are not following those governing documents because we, the people, are the governing authority, and that's the framework with which we chose to do that. Yeah. They're not just old documents that a few people signed a long time ago. Right. They're relevant today. Right. So I've also then, to try to hold our government accountable and to try to help the public wake up and to try to let the courts know what their job is, because I'm not one that likes to put all my eggs in one basket. That's never worked out for me. I've done a lot of things on my own. Someday I'll write a book about how awful things have been for me. I was a single mom for a lot of years. And I worked hard to get to where I'm at today. So, of course, God uses all those, right? In fact, I want to say he uses... In all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So I couldn't see it back then when I was a single mom in college and law school and working my way through and going to school full-time and working 3 jobs as a single mom with not a lot of help and nobody bringing me diapers or gallons of milk or anything like that. Or when my heat tape from my trailer in law school that I lived in, no one told me what it was, and then I had to turn it on. And so my pipes froze, or my hot water heater blew, or when my furnace went out in the middle of winter, and I slept with a heated blanket because I'm an adult, and I was a loving mother, so I didn't put a heated blanket on my child because he was 2 years old, and that could hurt him, right? So I wake up and flip off my heated blanket, and it's 45 degrees in my place, and I run to the other side of my trailer, and to find my son alive, but really cold. Yeah. I mean, the things we think we're doing to help our family, right? So, but God uses all those things in our lives, right? If for nothing else, to help us understand each other a little bit better and be able to show that grace and compassion and kindness that we're supposed to be doing. But in order to show, as I started to, I guess I should pause and say, in talking to the people of Michigan and trying to educate the people of Michigan, I hate Facebook. I'd never done a Facebook Live before. I think it might have been with Dr. Martin Dubravik that I might have done my first Facebook Live at the beginning of May. I hate all social media. My son's been telling me I gotta use TikTok to reach the young crowd these days. I think I'm glad that President Trump signed some sort of executive order to stop that, because I'm just not cool enough. I don't do Instagram, or as I think one of my daughters says, Insta, or Snap, whatever. Not my thing. I'm lucky I still have Facebook. At any rate, I had been getting per day, hundreds and hundreds of emails, phone calls, text messages, people wanting to know what this is all about, because I just put my number and my name out there, and I'm like, hey, when I stood on the steps of the Capitol, I told people how to reach me. I told them all the constitutional or statutory provisions. I had made a whole website just to post information so they could see it. And I said, this is how you can double check what I'm saying, and this is how you can reach me. Because no one else is really out there offering that information. And I thought at some point we might have somebody else step up, but it's like 5 months later. I'm still waiting. Still waiting. So because you take that now, I guess it's been, it was through, I don't think I did anything public until April. So you have April, May, and June, and July, and August, and most of September. Wow, I guess that's 6 full months of doing this stuff. I figured that I had a pretty unique opportunity to hear the voice of the people of the state of Michigan, because I wasn't an attorney who's maybe representing one of these super politicized cases that the media's picked up and everybody knows about. And I'm not blaming Carl Minke's attorney. That's just an example. Everybody knows Carl the barber, right? But when you're busy working on one individual case like that, then you don't necessarily have so much time to then field literally thousands of calls and emails and text messages about a variety of other things. And don't get me wrong, I'm really behind, and some of it's because I don't have the answers yet. But I am still working very hard to get a hold of people and get them the answers. And so I decided that I would start writing briefs to the Michigan Supreme Court, and then later the Court of Appeals, and back to the Michigan Supreme Court, saying that I was representing the interests of, and I'm not representing a particular party. I'm called an amicus. I wrote amicus briefs, and that's a friend of the court. And that's me coming to the court saying, I'm offering this brief to you on behalf from the perspective of the people of the state of Michigan, and in defense of the Michigan and the U.S. constitutions. And so that's what I did. Every single time I file one, that's what I'm doing it in the context of. I'm sure they're really annoyed with me by now. It's been several briefs, but what I was blessed to be a part of was on September 9th, I was actually given the opportunity to argue, got 5 whole minutes. As you can tell, that was really hard for me. But 5 whole minutes of oral argument in front of the Michigan Supreme Court to argue the unconstitutionality and illegality of these executive orders. So that was an amazing opportunity, and at first I didn't think they were listening, because I was one of the few attorneys that didn't even get any questions, and that was a bummer, because I only had 5 minutes, and I could go on and answer any questions, and I was really looking forward to that opportunity. But when I looked at them, I'm pretty sure none of them even blinked the whole time I was talking. So then I thought, okay, they froze their images, they walked off the bench, they took a coffee break. But I ended up hearing through the course of the next 4 hours that we were on, and I do realize at some point the public's connection ended and ours continued, and I don't know exactly when that happened, but at any rate, at some point, I would hear one of the justices questioning the attorney for the governor about the sheer number of executive orders at that point, which I had mentioned was over 177. And so he was being questioned on the fact that there were over 177 executive orders. Is that really true? Or no, his question was, I had mentioned that at that point on September 9th, we had been under this dictatorship rule for 183 days. So 183 days, and again, a little fact that I bothered to sit there and count out the days and do all that stuff for the night before at 4 in the morning, if I'm being honest. But it made a difference, because then the attorneys were being questioned, the attorneys for the Attorney General's office and the attorney for the governor were being questioned on those very facts about how many executive orders and how many days. And the governor's attorney, his answer was, well, I guess I don't know how long it's been. And when it got to the Attorney General's counsel, she's very smart. She seemed really put together and whatnot, not as different as the governor's attorney, for those of you who might have watched that day. But the Attorney General's counsel when she was asked about the number of executive orders, this is what she said. Well, I don't know. She's issued so many, I can't keep up. She said that on record to the Michigan Supreme Court. There's actually been some very interesting things coming from the Attorney General's office with regard to these executive orders, but that would be a digression I might not be able to return from and be able to come back to the reason why we're here today. So I've been blessed with that opportunity. We had additional briefs that the Michigan Supreme Court wanted. By 5 o'clock that day, they had told us that they wanted an additional brief that covered the questions, very specific questions, about, I knew I might forget this, so I wanted to bring it up here with me. Whether the Emergency Power of Governor Act, that's that 1945 law, applies in the context of public health generally, or to an epidemic such as COVID-19 in particular. I said no. Whether public safety, which is a term that's used in the 1945 law, whether that term, as used in the 1945 law, is a term of ordinary meaning, or whether it has developed some specialized legal meaning as an object of the state's police power. These are their words. And whether public safety encompasses public health events like epidemics. That's a lot of words to describe. Basically, they're looking for some definitions and some context. So an important thing, because this happens all the time. This is something that happens all the time. So regardless of what the actual argument is, it's important that judges and justices, and therefore the people who hold them accountable, know that, let's see, how did I word this? So at the time that I wrote this, and they were due 1 week later, so this was Wednesday the 16th, I said that we here in Michigan have been under Governor Whitmer's declaration of state of emergency for 190 full days, or more than 6 months. There are now, and there may be more now a whole week later, but there are now 181 of these orders, which only continue to grow in number since Executive Order 2020-177 extended the state of emergency into October, yet another extension. But whether it's 190 days or 5 minutes, even in times of emergency, our state and federal constitutions do not, absolutely do not, contain any language allowing the trampling of our constitutionally protected liberties or the government stepping outside of its given authority. Right. Period. There's no example of that in there. There's no carve out. Things are scary. Give the government more power. No, our founders were a lot more intelligent than that. Right. Think of what they had seen and what they had come from. Right. So I was asking the court to consider answering these questions, because legally they don't have to. They could just never answer. But also to, in their answer, immediately declare that these unconstitutional acts of our government are void. And when I say government, it's because we need to declare not only the governor's 2020 use of these executive orders. By the way, 11 of her 181 were legal, because they were actually executive orders under Article 5, Section 2 of our state constitution, where she's allowed to reorganize her executive branch. And then she has to present those orders to the legislature, and they have 60 days to decide whether or not they want to disapprove of them. So she did that for 11. 94% of her executive orders in the year 2020, though, are not constitutional. So because of that, I just refer to all 2020 executive orders as not being constitutional. I figured 94% was a big enough margin there. Right. So not only are those unconstitutional, but the entirety of the EPGA, the 1945 law, and the 1976 law are unconstitutional. So I'm just curious, anybody here, do you know what happens if you have a law that does something totally different, goes in a different direction than a constitutional provision? Does anybody know what happens? You gotta be super loud.
Would it be like something like an anarchy or something like that?
Not even that, you get to ignore it.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a supremacy clause in our U.S. Constitution that says that our U.S. Constitution and the laws made in pursuance thereof are supreme law of the land. And then we have a case, you probably have heard of it, Marbury versus Madison, that tells us that when we have unconstitutional laws or unconstitutional acts of the government, they're void. Well, if something's void, you don't have to go so far as to have anarchy or any kind of civil disobedience. You have civil obedience. I had somebody pick that fight with me early on, long before I knew I'd be writing any briefs. And he was saying, you're just arguing for civil disobedience and you need to be telling people to follow these executive orders while we fight them. And I said, excuse me, no. An unconstitutional law, an unconstitutional act of government is unconstitutional. And we have a duty to follow the Constitution, not these unconstitutional edicts. In fact, Article 11, Section 1 of our state constitution is when attorneys get sworn in as officers of the court, when police officers get sworn in, when any government or public official in the state of Michigan is sworn in, they take an oath to uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions, whether they're on the local school board or whether they're the governor, and everywhere in between, we take that same oath. So I've served on local downtown development authorities and planning commissions at the city level in a teeny tiny town that my husband dragged me to. No, just kidding. But it doesn't matter how the size of the town or the level of the position or in what branch, right? You have the same oath of office and you have to follow the U.S. and Michigan constitutions, period. So I had a duty all along to try to educate the people and try to hold our public accountable because they weren't following the U.S. and Michigan constitutions. So again, that's that whole Romans 13. I know some people disagree with me on it, but I actually read it at face value. So the other thing I pointed out to them, though, is, so this supplemental briefing that was directed by the Supreme Court's September 9th order was focused solely on statutory interpretation, right? So looking at what the meaning of words in the law are. And so some of the legal experts involved, quite honestly, the justices mostly, and some of the attorneys are actually, and I take that back, every single one of the attorneys except for me, was focusing so much on the detail of the statutory interpretation that they were losing the forest through the trees here. So what do I mean by that? Well, the U.S. Constitution says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, period. And like I said, in Marbury versus Madison, we're told that any law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and thus the courts and other departments are bound by that U.S. Constitution, period. So to the degree that the statutes in question violate any term of the U.S. or Michigan constitutions, the statutes are void, or the unconstitutional executive orders are void, period. And the full discussion on the meaning of the certain terms of the statutes themselves is no longer relevant. We can talk all day long about public health and public safety and whether public health is encompassed as part of the bigger term of public safety and whether that was intended or whether it's a specialized legal meaning. But do we think that the founders would have said that terms get to change as time goes on? When you have something in your, whether it's a law or in the Constitution, that the meaning of a word gets to change because some lawyers and judges have argued different things throughout the years because of it? I don't think so. That's not what the people, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people would be all about. So specialized legal meaning. So those of us that are special get to know what this is. You're not a lawyer? You don't get to know. That's what we've been told, quite frankly, for far too long. Now don't get me wrong, I'm proud of the hard work I did as a single mom, busting my butt all through law school, with not really a lot to help and a lot of struggles. I mean, Minnesota winters really suck. They just do. But I worked hard. I earned my degree. I was licensed in 4 jurisdictions by the time I was 23 years old. Opened my own law firm by 23 years old as a single mom. and 0 furniture in my office. Sorry, I had 2 chairs and a pad of paper and a pencil, and I had my first client show up that first day. So the thing is, I'm not proud to say I'm a lawyer these days. I'm not really proud to say I'm in the legal profession, because most people in the legal profession don't take our Constitution seriously, and far too many of them totally disregard, at least in their professional settings, the biblical foundations of our entire government. Don't let them tell you. Never let anyone in government or politics or in law tell you that you're not smart enough to read the Constitution, that you're not smart enough to read the laws. If the laws are so complicated that you're not smart enough to read them, then that means, guess what? The legislators, who are people, didn't read them either. I mean, they didn't read House Bill 5672 about microchipping us, which don't get me started on that one. They admitted. You want me to talk about that one? Oh, okay, well, they voted. 104 of the 110 legislators voted in favor of House Bill 5672. So what did that bill do? Well, in the summary of our laws, there's always a summary. The summary said that it's going to protect employees from being forced as a condition of employment to be microchipped. Yeah. So that'd be good, right? We don't want to be forced. But that's the summary. I don't know about you, but I stopped reading the Cliff Notes version of things after I got out of college, right? So I read the actual bill, which, by the way, was 3 pages. I don't care if it's 3,000 pages. You vote no on it if you don't read it, and that's just me. So in these 3 pages, if you look at Section 1 and Section 2, they seem to be going at a good pace, protecting us. Section 3 says, well, yeah, they can't do that to you unless the court orders it. I'm sorry, what judge has the right to order a human being to be implanted with a microchip? So what State Rep Jack O'Malley told people when he was mad that I was educating the people on video, and apparently word spread pretty quick because I had a few legislators really try to pick at me, he decided to tell everyone, well, first of all, to check my credentials, and I'd be more than happy to tell you what my credentials are if you really want me to. But he said that it's okay because it's for use of things like criminals. And so you have the ankle bracelets and the tracking devices, that it's okay to have that be like the next step of technology. Well, I'll tell you what, and this could be from the years I served as a public defender, but criminals are people. And the system isn't always right. So even if you have a conviction, you might not have actually committed a crime. And a lot of people that I represented as a public defender, a lot, had some disabilities, or they couldn't read, or had no way to gather the evidence that they could use to show their innocence in a particular situation. Not that our system's supposed to be designed for them to prove their innocence, but we won't even go there. So, no, I'm not okay with any human being being microchipped. I don't think God has that in our plan. So, what's far less important than that is what was in Section 4 of that same bill, which said that, okay, so let's assume that an employer goes outside of this and they go ahead and require you as a condition of your employment to get microchipped. All you can do is sue them for actual damages. Now that might not seem like okay, actual damage, yeah, I'm gonna get what I'm owed. No, actual damages means that once, it's just like kind of like 2 trials, okay? So you have your trial to prove that they did this and it's awful and it shouldn't have been done and it's illegal. And then you have a whole other trial where you as the plaintiff, as the aggrieved party, has to prove with receipts and all that you're out money. How much money are you out? Well, let's say that you, as a condition of employment, you're a single parent and you have 3 kids, and so that's a lot of food and diapers and stuff you need to care for, and so you go ahead and get that microchip for now, but then you sue them because it's not okay. So you don't want to lose your job, but then you decided this is not okay. Well, it's recent enough that you're healthy enough that your body hasn't had any kind of reaction to that process so far. So you don't have any out-of-pocket medical costs for it, assuming that they paid for the microchipping to begin with. So you don't have any out-of-pocket medical bills, and you don't have any loss of wages or anything because you still stayed working there. So your out-of-pocket costs are your filing fees at the courthouse. But don't worry, your attorney still gets paid under the statute. That's still allowed. So what should be in there is statutory damages, where the legislature has said ahead of time, hey guys, if you do this to people, you're going to have to pay X amount no matter what. As long as you have found to have done this, you're going to have to pay this amount. On top of that, there should be punitive damages. We all know that word, punitive, right? It's set up from the beginning to punish them if they do that. So if they know they're going to have to pay statutory and punitive damages for trying to microchip a human being, they might be slightly more not wanting to do that to somebody, right? But our legislature said, no, you're stuck with actual damages, what you have in your receipts, what you can show. So they supposedly are trying to address the judge ordering thing, but nobody's copping to Section 4 about the actual damages. Again, zero respect, I'm sorry, but zero respect for any of our representatives and senators right now. So that was actually voted on. 104 of our state reps voted in favor of that. 104. So clearly this is not a Republican-Democrat thing. This is a politician, we the people thing. And 2 of them voted against it, and I want to say there were 3 abstentions, and then 1 just wasn't, I don't know what happened there. But the 2 that voted against it, at first I thought, this is great because I know them, and one of them I considered a good friend since I ran for state rep years ago. And just good guy, Christian guy, and I was like, yes, okay, he stood out, and he has voted. He has often been the one vote to vote against everybody else, right? So I asked him, I said, hey, I heard this rumor that you voted no on this bill for this awful reason. I just want to know, why did you vote no? So he clarified, oh, he voted no because he thinks that the employer should be able to microchip somebody as a condition of employment. It's a free market society. What? That's why both of them voted no. We had 0 state reps stand up for our rights. 0 out of 110. This is not a Republican-Democrat problem. This is a human being problem. This is a freedom problem. This is a government is too big, and they're too big for their own britches, and they need to go home problem. Yeah, and that's why, if you think that anything that I'm doing, my petition that I haven't even talked to you about, or any of the other stuff, if you're going to ask me if the state senators or state reps or anybody in government's on my side and they're backing me in this, no, we're not really on close speaking terms right now. So the last thing that I was doing, and by the way, just to let you know, because I've kept you here long enough, and I'm sure I will be inundated with questions, which I will gladly answer as soon as I'm off the mic and people just feel more comfortable asking me individually, that's fine. I'll stay here, well, I was going to say all night long, but I have a driver, so I should check with her first. Assuming she's okay, I'm here all night long, I can answer any question. But what I want you to know, if you don't have the opportunity to stay longer to ask questions or whatever, is that I'm just getting started in this fight. I don't care if I'm making friends in this or making enemies. I'm going to do what I think God is calling me to do. I'm going to do it till the day He says that I no longer have to do it and I get to go to that beach. So if you're worried about how people are not stepping up and that we don't have the state reps and the state senators and the judges and the justices and the attorneys and some law enforcement and whatever fighting for us or doing the right thing, you're not alone. I will help you take them down. I have your back. I would ask for you to have my back, and I can explain what that looks like in a little bit, but I'm not going anywhere. I just want you guys to know that. I don't want you guys to ever lose hope in what our society is doing or where we're at, or that there's nobody out there, because I know I can't be the only one. I really know that I can't be the only one. I'm just the only one I know of so far. But even if I am the only one, I'll take my little rock and my little slingshot and I'm going to go get him. And I don't care what he's got or how big he is. I don't care how big this mountain is that God said to move. We'll get it done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the last thing that I've been doing, I keep thinking this is a spider on me. And I have arachnophobia, so we're lucky that I haven't broken your mic. The Restore Freedom Initiative. So amidst all these other things that I've been doing, I'm a big picture person, which is kind of a bad thing for me because I'm also a small details person. It basically means I'm OCD about every single area of my life, and I think more about, put more thought into what socks I'm going to wear in any given day than most people put into what major they're going to have in college. I don't say that as a joke. I really mean that. So, yes, that means pray for my husband and my children, really, because they're not OCD. So what that means, though, is that while I was doing all these things, I knew every day, okay, God's calling me to do this. He's calling me to do this. He's calling me, this is great. And for a couple weeks, though, I'd been saying, okay, God, tell me, what's the bigger picture here? I want to make sure I'm not missing the mark. I don't want to lose the forest through the trees. What is the overall thing I'm supposed to be doing? Or is it multiple points or something? Just make sure that I know, because I've been a stubborn learner. I didn't grow up really being a Christian. I was pro-choice for many years, as an example. And I could tell you that I don't want to have to get to the point of losing another baby to have to learn the value of life and what I should be fighting for, and that pro-life is really the only choice because that's how God designed it. I don't want to have to go through painful lessons like that to know what I should be doing here. So I was like, God, no, I don't want to learn the lesson. You just tell me, and I'll write it down. So he did. He told me one day. It was the second to last Friday in May, and I had a college intern that had been showing up just because her parents had seen me on Facebook Live, and she lived not that far from me, and she'd been fired because she was a waitress, and they were, closed. And the college that she was attending had been closed. And so she lived a couple miles away and was coming over either every single day or every single day, Monday through Friday at least. I don't remember now. And so Emma, my youngest, would sit there and do her homeschooling work because I wasn't waiting for the public school system to start sending me the packets at home or do the online stuff. No, from day one we were doing school. And the only reason why she was in that public school is because I worked there 3 days a week. But anyway. So I would work on legal stuff, and I had this college intern who wants to be a constitutional attorney someday, helping me. And I said, you know what? Can you look up constitutional amendments? Like, are they a thing? Can we do that? And sure enough, I sat there and I wrote down this list. I don't know about you, but I get the best ideas when I'm shampooing. When you're in the shower and you have soap in your eyeballs and you have no electronics, you can't write something on a piece of paper. There's nobody there with you, right? Because you're in the shower. I mean, my 6-year-old's usually in the room because I'm a mom, right? Nobody gets privacy. But trying to explain to her, okay, can you make a bullet-pointed list of what God's telling me right now? It doesn't happen, right? So anyway, so luckily I remembered, and I got to this point, and it might even be in this notebook here. But I wrote a bullet-pointed list, hence the OCD. And it was educating the public. It was educating our legislators and our government officials. It was fighting for people that had been essentially acted, like the government was acting like they were the criminal when they were simply exercising their own rights or protecting the rights of others. It was writing briefs in the Michigan Supreme Court, and it was writing a constitutional amendment. And when that last one was written, when I looked at that, I was like, right, I don't think I heard that one right. I think it must have been, now keep in mind, this is before the 1945 repeal became a thing with the really cool Stand Up Michigan group. I was like, no, I think I'm supposed to be doing a repeal. That'd be way easier, right? So long story short, no, God said, no, that's not what I want you to do. I want you to do a constitutional amendment. And this is a process, just so you know, to give you context, this is a process that takes $2 million, I'm told. It's a process that takes 1.5 to 2.5 years of planning and coordinating and doing focus groups and talking to all kinds of big power players, right? It's a process that takes teams and teams of attorneys that get paid oodles and oodles of money. I started writing it. Well, first I was told about this that second to last Friday of May, which I want to say is like the 23rd, 22nd. And I had it written by the next, revised, reviewed first by real people, a few attorneys, but some real people, because that was the important people, right? Then revised, and found a printer and had it laid out, and had the first round of 40,000 petitions or so printed and brought to my house by that next Saturday. 1 week. I'm really cool, but I'm not that cool. So that's a God thing. God gets that stuff done. So what this constitutional amendment doesn't just repeal the 1945 law. There's a really interesting brief that was filed by the governor's attorney in the same case actually today. Very interesting. But the 1945 law isn't really what's our problem. It's part of the problem. It needs to go. It's not good. 1976 law at first was our biggest problem. It does some really ugly, awful stuff. I've done like a whole 1.5-hour video just talking about the ugly stuff in that law. I knew, though, that she was going to start utilizing some of these other provisions of a little-known thing called the Public Health Code. And we saw a judge down in Kent County that had issued some warrants for people with no name because eventually someone in the public health department might see someone, think they might be exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, and they wanted to exercise their rights under this law to get a warrant so they could go ahead and take this person off the street, transport them to a governmental facility somewhere, observe them, and diagnose them, and treat them, and they could be held, all of this, for up to 6 days under the state law in the Public Health Code. And these warrants were issued by the Kent County judge. I don't know if they were ever used. I don't know. I'd like to think not. But they were issued. And the fact is, even if no county had issued them, it's there for them to do it. So when I saw that, I knew that it wasn't just going to be the 1945, the 1976 law that we were going to have to address. This constitutional amendment, well, it does a lot, quite honestly. I don't know about you, but in our Republican form of government, Article 4 of our U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, guarantees us a Republican form of government. What that means is we, the people, retain the power, and then we elect representatives to represent us in certain capacities. And so anytime we have, let's say, a civil rights commission that is appointed by our governor, and they get to exercise legislative, executive, and judicial powers over the people. I don't know about you, but those two concepts don't seem to correlate very well. So it's constitutional for that to exist in the sense that it is written into the Michigan Constitution that we have a Civil Rights Commission with those duties, but it doesn't follow the United States Constitution. And that whole supremacy clause thing kind of gets in the way of us enforcing that kind of thing here, which we have for years. And I haven't heard anybody challenging the constitutionality of the Civil Rights Commission. That's just one example. But quite frankly, any government official or any government entity at all or agency that's not elected, should they be, let's say the Barber's License Bureau for Carl, right? Or the local health department, and being able to do these summary proceedings against people's licenses where they're going to pull your business or your liquor license or things like that. That means without a hearing. Should any of those things be able to happen? If you're not elected by the people to be in a judicial capacity, should you be allowed to exercise judicial powers here in the United States? If you're not elected to be in the legislative capacity, you probably shouldn't be allowed to exercise legislative duties, right? Or executive, for the executive. So this constitutional amendment gets rid of all of those unelected bureaucrats and their powers to regulate us as the people. Now, if they want to keep a particular agency going because they need to regulate the government, they need to regulate themselves, that's okay. We need the government to regulate itself because it is far too out of control. But a lot of what this constitutional amendment does, besides the Civil Rights Commission and a few of those things where we're changing and bringing it back to the way that it was, is clarifying. Well, okay, why? Well, because we have, it's not, what the governor's doing right now, it's unconstitutional. These executive orders and violating all of our rights, which, by the way, there's a ton of rights. Even if you've never read the Michigan State Constitution and you don't have a lot of interest in it, read Article 1. Just read Article 1. That's our rights. And the U.S. Constitution, read the first 14 amendments. Just do that. If you're only going to read some, read the first 14 amendments of the U.S. Constitution and Article 1 of our state constitution. That'll give you a better understanding of what our rights are. And by the way, those are not all of our rights. Article 1, Section 23 of our state constitution is basically the same as the 9th Amendment of our U.S. Constitution, which says that just because we didn't enumerate a particular right doesn't mean we don't have it. God gave us a bunch of rights, and we don't have enough paper to write it all down on. Right. So we retain those rights. Right. People often talk about the 10th Amendment, which reserves powers to the states and to the people, respectively, which by itself, I think, proves that it's not just to the states, but the people retain control. But they forget about the 9th Amendment that came before the 10th Amendment for a reason, and it says that we have rights given to us by God that we did not choose to write down, because who on earth thought we would have to write an amendment that says we have the right to not wear a mask in public? Or to not be microchipped as a condition of employment. Or to not have contact tracing, or not have your children who are in public schools when the next kid over coughs and they think your kid has now been exposed to COVID, and they're going to pull them in and they're going to do questioning. This was a bill that was passed and signed by the governor, by the way, about how our schools are opening, their reopening plans, and it says right on in there that they can pull the kids in without you there and question them and get all kinds of history about where your family's been and what you're doing and where you're going. Yeah. That's our Republican legislature with our Democrat governor, not a Republican-Democrat problem. So anything that the legislature is backing at this point, I kind of shy away from. Anyway, it's already unconstitutional. You can't enforce those unconstitutional edicts, orders, anything. I spell that out. So the next time we have a governor that forgets how to read the law or forgets how to read the Constitution, I put it in big red crayon for her or him. I also spell out that things like internal operating procedures or, I don't know, executive orders that are not laws and they're not the Constitution, they're not enforceable upon the people. I mean, it's already a thing, but I make it exceedingly clear. Here's one that who's heard of governmental immunity? Just in general, like not necessarily know what it means, but you've heard of it. Who here feels like people in government can do whatever they want and get away with it and they never are held accountable? Yeah. Right. Seriously? Not more of you that think that? Oh, okay. I'm starting to see some more hands and fingers. Okay. That's because pretty much that's the way it is. Our system is set up so that the people don't disturb the people in government up here doing their thing. And to a certain degree, we need that. But obviously, we push that pendulum way too far, and it's about time that it swings back. So this constitutional amendment finally allows our government officials to be held criminally and financially responsible for intentionally violating the Constitution. First time's a misdemeanor. Second time's a felony with a $25,000 fine coming out of their pocket. They are immediately removed from office, no need for a recall, and they're not ever allowed to hold public office in the state or local governments again. Some really obvious ones that, again, are already the way the law works, but we're using highlighter for them. in government, that government officials are not allowed to pick and choose which laws they want to follow. And we're reiterating that the government gets no additional powers over us in emergencies. I think our state constitution actually does a lot of that, but again, you know, they pick and choose, and it's not just her, it's all of them right now. But tell me, raise your hand if anybody's heard of this provision. Article 4, section, and not just in one of my videos. Article 4, section 39 of our state constitution specifically deals with states of emergency. And it says that in a state of emergency, our state and local government functions must continue to operate. Anybody heard of that? I didn't know of that. I found it in there, and I was like, what? They are not doing that, are they? When I had to go in, this was the year that I had to get my picture taken and everything, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this is the big one. Okay, so I got to go physically there, but I can't wear a mask. How's that going to work? I have to make an appointment. Then I couldn't find my cell phone, and I couldn't find exactly what my time was, and I'm trying to find it, and I'm looking all around for it, and I thought for sure it was at like 12:45, but it turned out to be at 12:15, and as soon as I saw my phone, it was like 12:15. I'm like, oh, and guess what? It's like a whole nother month and a half down the road before you can get another appointment, which is going to take me well past my birthday. Those kinds of things shouldn't happen. And I know how to use technology fairly well. What about my 82-year-old grandmother who might just want to get a state ID? How's she supposed to do that? How are people who barely can handle the way that it's already horrible and not functioning, be able to use those services or get those I mean, getting a state ID these days is not really optional, is it? It's required for everything, which in a lot of senses I agree with, right? But then they have to be open for us to do that. So, at any rate, in here we establish a true system of government accessibility and transparency and accountability. Because what exactly is a Republican form of government for us if we have no way to see what they're doing or access them, talk to them, hold them accountable, and do anything about it? I mean, it'd be Republican form of government by name only, right? So we've heard, how many have heard of the Open Meetings Act, OMA? How many people have heard of FOIA, Freedom of Information Act? Okay. Those won't be laws anymore with this constitutional amendment, because the good parts, minus all the big loopholes, are now going to be in the Constitution with this amendment. Because that goes to the very, very foundation of you can't have a Republican form of government if you don't have a proper way to hold your government accountable, to be able to see what they're doing, know what they're doing. And by the way, Freedom of Information Act, that's the most ironic thing I've ever heard in my life, where you have to request information that should have already been freely given to you, then you have to pay for it, and if you don't pay for it, then you get, anyway, it's lovely. Even as a victim of a crime, you have to do that process. And then it's all redacted, and then if your insurance was going to help you pay for something, but it's redacted, then it's a nightmare. Yeah, that was my first, when I first moved back to Michigan. I had my stuff, my purse and my computer stolen, and had to file a Freedom of Information Act request, and I got real acquainted with how Michigan government works or doesn't. So, at any rate, for the most part, government things, government decisions will have to be made available on their website in a way that actually makes sense for people to be able to view things, not 22 clicks later and you can figure out what the city council meeting packet is going to look like for your local city council. So you shouldn't have to request those things. Anything that's going to be used by the public body to make a decision on behalf of the public should be made public ahead of time for free. Now, if you want them to print it for you because you don't have a computer, okay, you could be charged $0.25 per page or whatever, right? Because there is cost to that. But putting it online, let's be honest, that infrastructure should have been in place long ago, and there's no reason why we need to be charging people to look that up. things like public mask requirements and anything else that's likely to impair health in anyone is prohibited from being enforced upon anyone in this constitutional amendment. I didn't even know masks were going to be the thing when I wrote this. We started this in May. But whether it's a forced vaccination that Bill Gates wants to promote because he thinks that everybody who doesn't want a COVID vaccine is awful and heinous, or whether it's microchipping, or whether it's telling people that they have to wear masks 12 hours a day, that's likely to impair your health one way or another. That's not going to be enforced upon anybody. It already isn't, because we already have those unenumerated rights. This just spells it out so we don't have to worry about fighting tooth and nail in the meantime of while we're trying to hold our government accountable and reel them back in. Who here knows of someone who's been charged with a high court misdemeanor or a felony in Michigan? So who here then, there's at least some of you that in theory might know this, who here knew, it was really clear, when someone was going to be at the district court level versus when their case was moved up to the circuit court level? Is that really obvious? It's not obvious to anybody. I've done criminal law for a lot of years. It's really not obvious. Why do we have that? Well, quite frankly, I don't really care. But we should have one criminal court. Wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't that make it more accessible to people? District court is already the genesis of all criminal actions here in the state of Michigan, so I would think they could stay in district court and just that could be a criminal court. Well, what about family? Who knows which judge in any particular county, not just up here, does divorces? Is it your probate judge? Is it your circuit judge? Anybody have an idea of how it's done all over the state? It's different in every county. Yep. Some counties it's your probate judges. Some counties it's your circuit court judges. A lot of times it's not even the judges that really make the decisions. It's the front of the court referees that make most of the decisions. And they're not elected by the people. So, civil cases. Well, what if you bought my car and I really would like to say that it's worth $25,000, but you didn't end up paying me. But let's say, I'm not quite sure, we had some dispute about a little piece in there, so it's either $24,500 or $25,500. It's one of the two. We can at least agree that that's where we're at. Which court would I file it in? District court for under $25,000, circuit court for over $25,000. Oh, I knew I recognized you, troublemaker back there. Point being, no one really knows that, right? Because no one should have to know that. It's some dumb thing somebody made up somewhere along the way. And what does it do? It serves to disenfranchise the people. It serves to get people to feel so disconnected from government and how it works, and not be able to participate in things and adequately be able to defend themselves or assert their own rights, that most people just go, whatever, I can't do this, and they walk away. Our government is supposed to be there for us. Literally, the whole point of our government is that because we are grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom and earnestly desiring to secure these blessings undiminished to ourselves and our posterity, we do ordain and establish this Constitution. So how can we have a government where we, the people, don't even know how to use the court system? That's not appropriate. So this constitutional amendment creates a family court, because whether it's a child abuse and neglect case, whether it's a divorce case, whether it's a PPO, whether it's an adult guardianship, or anything like that, your family matters. It's all one family, right? It should all be with one court. Because way too many times I've seen orders that are opposing and going in different directions because maybe you have an abuse and neglect case, or maybe there's a guardianship, or maybe there's a, oh, don't throw me off just yet, I'm almost done, I promise. Yes. See, it's almost going. Civil. Civil court would be whether you owed me $24,500 or $25,500, we shouldn't have to worry about that. If it's a civil thing, if it's a contract, it's a business matter, if it's a landlord-tenant thing, if it's a no-fault insurance case, if it's any of that stuff, it could be had in front of one judge. In fact, how many things could one judge be an expert in? I could tell you that as an attorney, I'm a perfectionist, granted, but after being a general practitioner for a few years and then working for other attorneys for years before that, I was like, you know, I don't feel comfortable being able to adequately represent somebody doing deeds, drafting deeds, and doing real estate litigation and landlord-tenant representation, and then doing divorce cases and custody and all that child support and everything that goes along with that, and then the abuse and neglect cases and keeping up with the laws on that, and then, oh, but wills and estates and trusts, especially after the big change that happened right around the time I came to Michigan in the first place, and then guardianships and, you know, criminal law and, well, driver's license restoration, that's administrative law procedures. Oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly keep it all straight. How is a judge, really? I mean, maybe they're way smarter than me, but let's be honest, no matter what my IQ is, there's a lot of judges that would not be smarter than me.
They just say, you're in my court, you do what I say.
Kind of.
Read the law.
So the point is they're real people, right? Just like the rest of us. So even though they have a law degree, they don't have an expert law degree in every single minute area of law that changes quite constantly, because we have a legislature that thinks that it's more of like a hobby than a profession to regulate the people, right? So at any rate, by doing this, it not only makes it easier for the people, it makes it easier for the courts to actually be more in tune with and understanding of what the laws are. So, I mean, this constitutional amendment does a ton, but, this is one of my favorite things. This requires that all laws must be reasonably understandable by the average citizen when they're passed. Well, I think that means the legislature would have to read it then before they vote on it. In fact, when it comes to that, what I didn't tell you is that I would be abolishing in this constitutional amendment the legislative council, because I don't know about you, but I always thought our legislature, we voted them in so that they did the research, they talked to the people, they knew what their needs were, they followed up on things, did the research, drafted the laws, and then voted on the laws based on being informed. No. What they do is they talk to some people that call them the most or bother them the most, or that they've played golf with for a lot of years, or they have some other kind of personal connection, or the lobbyists are, you know, got their ear on. And then they go to the attorneys that get paid the big bucks and they're not elected, and they draft the laws. And then, because the attorneys draft the laws and the attorneys are so much smarter and they're experts, even though their P number, meaning their attorney registration numbers, shows me that they've been in practice for maybe a year or two. But anyway, they're so much smarter and they're experts, right? And so they're going to the legislators saying, okay, well, I wrote this bill and it's perfect and it's wonderful and it does all these things, and you therefore have to vote on it this way. So then the legislators don't even read it, because they're not smart enough to read it and they can't explain it to their constituents. All that's gone in this constitutional amendment. We put them in place to talk to the constituents, to understand we the people and our needs, right? To do the research on how to best fix a problem if it belongs in legislation in the first place, because they're not supposed to fix every problem by legislating it away, right? Unless that law is to take away 6 other laws that were already on the books. And then they should be able to write it themselves, because if they can't write it and read it themselves and understand it, then how would the average person be able to understand it and be able to follow it?
Right.
This is not a society of attorneys. This is a government of we the people. So those are the highlights, the best things about that. So now that I have kept you here until next week already.
Well worth it, though.
Okay, well, thanks. What can you do? Well, number one, I'm going to ask you to pray. First of all, selfishly, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to ask you to pray for me. Because I'm human, and I have a marriage, 4 kids, and I own a business, and all my services from my church went away. Every single thing I'd utilized in that church went away. I'm going to ask you to pray for me and my marriage. I'm going to ask you to pray for my kids. Especially the one that I still homeschool because, you know, she's only 6, and by the time she's 16, I'm sure I'm going to want to strangle her. But I really want you to pray for my kids, especially since I do this every single day. I've taken 0 days off since the beginning of April. Because if our members of our military can fight overseas and not see their families and not even live at home and have subpar accommodations, certainly I can be living out of my own home most of the time. I don't know where I'm going tonight, but certainly I can be living out of my home most of the time and see my children and my family and, you know, my husband and all that. So I will not, and I've had people tell me, you know, well, you're no good to us if you're whatever. God's keeping me going. As long as God keeps me going and He doesn't tell me I need to rest for now, I'm going to keep going. And so when I ask you for strength, I ask you for prayers for strength, and I ask you for prayers that my kids know that I still love them when I'm not spending the time that I want to be there with them. I ask you to pray for our leaders. I ask you to pray for Nessel, Attorney General Dana Nessel. I ask you to pray for our governor, because those two are some of, in my opinion, some of the most evil, vile humans that I have ever come to know, and we need to pray for them. Because we're all God's people, so God can work miracles. It's not too late for them. We need to pray for them. I ask you to read and know the U.S. and Michigan constitutions. And like I said, if you're only going to pick a certain part, pick Article 1, which is the Declaration of Rights from our state constitution, and pick Amendments 1 through 14 or 15 of our United States Constitution. But quite frankly, I'd like you to really read and know all of our U.S. and Michigan constitutions. And if you're only going to start with one, start with the Michigan Constitution, because that's what's being litigated in our state Supreme Court right now. That's what's most relevant in a lot of ways. Start with that and really get to know it. I would ask that you donate. I have taken one paid case since all of this began. I'm living on donations. The Restore Freedom Initiative and the thousands of dollars it costs to print all the petitions. We need 425,059 signatures, by the way, which means we need a lot more petitions printed as they spread around the state. But all of that costs money. And when I started, I didn't have that $1 million that a lot of people, or $2 million that a lot of people say you need. Stand Up Michigan's raised at least the $1 million. I don't have that. I literally had $0 when I started this. And I knew God wanted me to do it, so I knew the funds would come, but I also know that I need to be able to tell you as God's people that I need your help with that. So there's actually 3 different ways that we can have you help us in that regard. All the legal work that I'm doing, the filing of briefs with the Michigan Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals and all that, there's a fee to that. Every brief, every motion I file with the Michigan Supreme Court is $77.25. It's more expensive at the Court of Appeals for some reason. Not sure about why that is. Don't think I want to know. My printer, as you could probably well imagine, has had a few different drums and several different toners replaced throughout the course of all this work. So those are all costs that, since I'm not taking and paying clients except for the one, I need help with. So there's just specifically for the petitions. There's the legal work that I'm doing to get the word out there. And my dad actually started a GoFundMe because if my business isn't making money, then it's a little harder for me to pay my student loans and my other bills. So there's 3 distinct ways that are on our website that you can donate. And there's a little flyer with a QR code that you can scan if you're really good with all that stuff. Other than that, there's checks and other ways to donate. And so I feel really awful every single time that I have asked for donations, but
Don't feel bad.
well, I haven't done anything yet, so maybe that's the thing. I also ask you to vote. Unlike the rumors, can't help myself but laugh. Anybody that follows me on Facebook or is part of the movement or anything, I was accused of trying to steal this 70,000 member group on Facebook called The Movement because I was running for office. Technically, I am running for office. I am the Republican nominee for Georgetown Township trustee. Yeah. So 99% of you, are you in Georgetown Township? Okay, one person in this room can vote for me. So I don't want you to vote for me, the rest of you, because that's what happens in Chicago, but we don't live there. So I want you to vote. I want you to know who you're voting for. In all seriousness, I want you to, if you haven't already looked it up, within the next 24 hours, I'm going to beg you to go punch in your information on the Secretary of State's website and look at your entire ballot and know who everyone is from the very top to the very bottom. Justices and judges, I don't know if you have a prosecutor or a sheriff, your local school board, or if there's any other, I don't know if millages would be on there, anything that's on there. I'm begging you to have an intelligent, well thought out answer for every single question that's being asked of you on that ballot. I will tell you that Bridget McCormick, our Chief Justice of our Michigan Supreme Court, is actually up for election this year. So if you didn't like how the legislature's lawsuit against the governor wasn't accepted right away at the end of May, beginning of June, you might want to consider that. If you didn't like how basically a decision on any of these issues of constitutional importance a decision has not been rendered all of these months, and we're sitting at September 23rd, is that today? And we're still waiting, you might want to keep that in mind. There are 3 Michigan Supreme Court justices that have been arguing from day one that this is unconstitutional and that there's a duty of the Michigan Supreme Court to have these issues heard and decided and declared unconstitutional right from the get-go. That's Justice Markman, who I'm really hoping I'm remembering this wrong, but I think he's retiring this year. Don't make me cry when I'm up here. Justice Viviano and Justice Zara. And Justice Bernstein's been kind of on the fence, just so you know. And he asked some really amazing, logical questions on September 9th at the Michigan Supreme Court hearing. But at any rate, so pay attention to who's on there. And I have been promising that I will be offering people my recommendation for who to vote for that office. An acquaintance of mine has put together a list and has started publicizing it on Facebook, and I haven't looked at it yet, and I haven't researched it yet, but I will be shortly, hopefully by the end of tomorrow, able to tell you guys my thoughts on that particular race. Also keep in mind, how many people really liked the Court of Appeals decision that came out on the legislature's lawsuit against the governor when they said the governor was allowed to do what she's doing? How many people thought that was a good decision? Okay, then you might want to know that Jane Markey, one of the 2 judges that voted in favor of that position, is up for election this year. So, and I don't know exactly what area that is, if it's statewide, I didn't even look at that yet, but she was on my ballot, so I was like, whoa. So the last thing is to educate, well, not the last thing, I skipped one, but educate others. Talk to your friends and your family and your neighbors and everyone. Let me ask you this, how many people, in all honesty, now all the cameras, nobody's cameras I don't think are looking at any of the audience, so you're totally safe here. But how many people have thought about posting something about the truth about COVID or the truth about what the Bible really wants us to do with regard to wearing masks, or whether, I don't know, just to shed some light on any of this that's going on, or to urge fellow Christians to stand up and do something and hold our government officials accountable, because that's what God is calling us to do, but for whatever reason, you held back. You didn't want to make your family mad. You didn't want to make your friends mad. You didn't want to, maybe your boss would see it and doesn't agree with your political views, or for whatever reason, how many people in any of this mess have thought about posting something and for one of those reasons thought, and either hesitated or didn't post? Okay. I'm going to ask you to step out in faith and post it anyway. And a couple of things as to why. In Romans 2:13, it is those who obey the law who will be declared righteous. I'm asking people to obey the law, the Constitution, first, because that is our main law after God's law in the United States. And in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. 12:2, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. Don't be afraid of what your friends, your neighbors, your boss, anybody says. If they are part of the pattern of this world, don't conform to it any longer. Isaiah 1:17 tells us to seek justice and rebuke the oppressor, and that's in talking to the people of a rebellious nation when Isaiah wrote that. Ezekiel 2:3, when he was sent to a rebellious nation that had rebelled against God, he said, they and their fathers have been in revolt against me to this very day. At the very beginning, I was telling you that I think this is the tool that God is using to show us this has been all happening for quite some time. He put fast forward on it so that we could start to see it a little bit better. We could wake up to it and go, well, it's a little bit harder to deny it's going on now. Right. And in Ezekiel 11, starting in verse 1, when the leaders of the people are giving wicked advice in the city, God calls us to speak out against them, to speak the right word at the right time in the right way. That includes on Facebook when you think your friends are going to be mad at you, or your brother-in-law is not going to play basketball with you anymore. And don't forget Psalms 31:24, that we're supposed to be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart, all ye that hope in the Lord. Or Psalm 56:11, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Of course, there's Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And Ezekiel 2:6, and you, son of man, do not be afraid of them or their words. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions. Because 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. It's extremely uncomfortable to have to be the one in your circle of friends or the one person in all of your extended family to be fighting or posting or encouraging or trying to speak the truth. But you're needed. Whether it's on Facebook, whether it's at a family function, whether it's in a card or something you're handwriting to somebody, you're needed. So I'm going to also ask that every single person in here who's a registered voter, who's old enough to vote anyway, and is a U.S. citizen, to consider circulating that petition. I 100% believe, with my life bet on it, that God wants that to happen. God wrote it, not me. He utilized my skills, but he made it happen, and it's over there, and we're needing to get 425,059 signatures that are valid. And I'd like to think I have a lot of friends, but even when I'm not saying things that are controversial, I've never had 425,000 friends. So whether you're someone who doesn't feel like you get out very much at all, and maybe you really don't, if you even get gas, go to the grocery store, pick up a prescription, anything, go sit at a park, go to the library. Are those even open? I don't even know. It's pretty sad when you don't know. You can keep 4 or 5 empty petition sheets on a clipboard and keep them in your car or keep them with you wherever you go. And if you walk into, see somebody who's walking around without a mask on, that's probably a good indicator that they like their freedom. Or you're walking along the street, if you live more like in city limits, or driving along, if you more live in the country or whatever, and you see, now this is not a partisan thing, I'm just telling you some cheater ways, right? If you see a Trump flag, or a thin blue line, or a don't tread on me, or an American flag, chances are good that if you ask that individual if they could sign our Restore Freedom Initiative petition, that they probably would. But I need your help. So I'm begging you. I'm honestly begging each and every one of you. Please help me in that regard. Please. It's super easy, and I have 2 captains over there, at least one, who it looks like she might be training somebody right now. And yes, that person in purple is my new favorite person. And we have these really cool things that you get one that's laminated, or you get one that's not laminated and you want to laminate yourself or whatever, that tell you all the cool highlights that I was just talking to you about of what this petition does. It makes it easy for you because this petition does a lot because our government's a huge mess. So I could sit there and try to pawn off the 1945 repeal on you like it's going to really fix something, and it would make my life a lot easier and it'd be a lot less signatures. But I'm going to do the right thing, not the easy thing. And so it is longer and more complicated. And so having a cheat sheet like this is probably going to be helpful. And it has that handy QR code that you can have people scan, so they don't have to have something to take home with them. Hopefully, most people would be at least willing to try scanning it with their phone, with their camera, and then click on the link, and then voila, it brings you to our website, and you could read the whole petition. You could find out how to donate. You can find other places to sign, that kind of thing, all kinds of cool stuff. So I would ask, those all would be my asks of you. But just no matter what, no matter how hard it is, no matter how discouraging it is out there, stay engaged, keep praying, and don't give up. Amen. So since I probably put 90% of you to sleep by now, does anybody have any questions?
For the sake of people watching on Facebook, if somebody was writing a check, would it be to Restore Freedom Initiative or to Katherine Henry? How would they write a check?
So Michigan law is really special, and credit unions and banks go by like basically a whole different set of laws. So in the end, you can write a check to any, whether it's any of the 3 that I talked about, you can write it to Katherine Henry, but in the memo line, you can write petition, legal work, or personal. And that's how I know which account to put it into. Because all 3 have to have my name on them, and they wouldn't open a bank account that's in the name of Restore Freedom. Isn't that great? Yeah.
So let me see the hands. Was there anybody, we have a microphone back there, that if anybody wants to ask a question, Jake is my mic man. And I just want to see it. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3. We've got several questions coming up. So before we do that, what I wanted to do was, while we're here, that we do the first donation, kick it off here tonight.
Oh.
So I'm going to let my wife do it.
I take up the offerings in church, so we're going to take up an offering tonight, right? Because I know you guys, you'll go home and you'll forget about this, and this nice lady who's taken 2 hours out of her life, and every single day, and no beach time. She's already missed Michigan summer, and she's got a beautiful little girl over there who probably knows that. So let's write your checks to Katherine Henry and or cash. You don't need our little envelopes. We're going to go ahead and, yep, our buckets are right there. And actually, I'm going to have you come and bring it in because we don't have our ushers handy right now, unless, Joe, you want to do that? Yeah, well, live stream wants to hear the questions answered. So I would say normally stand up and we'll pray, but we won't do that right now. So go ahead and stand up if you're ready. I know you guys want to support something so important as this, and I'm going to pray anyway. So go ahead and stand up. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for moving on the hearts of people who know things, that they can do things, and we thank you. We're so grateful for the country we live in. We are so grateful for what you're doing in our land even now. And I thank you, Father, for causing support to come into the Henry home and into her business and into this petition drive. Father, it's always by your hand. You supply all of our needs according to your riches and glory in Christ Jesus, and you cause us to be sufficient in all things, that we require no aid or support, that we are furnished for every good work and charitable donation. And this is that. And we thank you, Father, for causing her to just rise up and be a success, because everything she sets her hand to should prosper. In Jesus' name, amen. So go ahead and just bring that up whenever you want, and we'll go ahead and start the questions. The baskets are on each side.
Oh, everybody can hear. That's okay, I can hear me. I've sent emails to this lady. They've already got, Unlock Michigan has got over 500,000 signatures to repeal the 1945 law. Can you explain the process after the petitions are approved by the Secretary of State? Who goes on, what's the procedure?
Just for their petition?
Yes. To get rid of to repeal the 1945 law?
So the 1945 law, actually, can I see my phone? I'm going to probably reference something on there. Sorry, I should have asked you that when you were all the way up here. Thank you. So the 1945 law, okay. The 1945 repeal, when the signatures have been validated and it gets to the legislature has 40 days to determine whether they are going to, and this is, if anybody's wanting to follow along, especially like those at home that might have stuff to reference, this is, I believe, Section 2, sorry, make sure I'm quoting everything correctly here. Section 2, Article 9, Article 2, Section 9 of our state constitution that talks about this. And so there would be 40 days, 40 session days from the time the petition is received by the legislature for them to act. And so if they just choose not to act, or they choose to act and they don't have the majority of votes to pass it through, then it can still happen. It would go to a vote of the people, which would take place in the November 2022 election, which is when mine is going to be voted on, assuming we get the signatures. My petition doesn't go to the legislature at all. So, and one thing I forgot to mention that is super important, and maybe I kind of alluded to it, but so I mentioned how we have rights that are given to us by God, of course. And we have those sections in our U.S. and Michigan Constitution that talk about the unenumerated rights. We are treated these days that if we want to do something, we have to prove that we have a legal right to do something, right? Oh, you have to, what law gives you the right to do X, Y, Z? In fact, I've had many people, even those in government, that have called me or emailed me wanting to know, what's the law that shows me I have the right to do this, and that? Here's the thing. We have the right to do something unless there's a legitimate thing that the government has done to restrict that right in some way. And the government, on the other hand, cannot do a single thing unless the U.S. or Michigan Constitution specifically allows them to. There's no inferences. If the U.S. or Michigan Constitution does not say that they have the authority to do something to regulate us in some way, then they don't, period. I don't care what law there is on the books. I don't care how many governors before her have done it or whatever the scenario is. The legislature, the governor, the courts, they don't have the right to act unless we gave them that specific authority in our U.S. or Michigan constitutions. So a huge thing that sometimes I take for granted when I'm talking to people, but I want to make sure you guys all have that in context. So I'm sure there's another.
So they can ignore those signatures?
The legislature can choose to not act on the signatures, correct? But then that's why the Constitution allows that it would then go to the 2022 ballot. At this point, just because it has to go on a regular general election ballot, and so we're already getting so close to it, the Constitution has timeframes that you have to turn things in, beforehand.
Hi, Catherine, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm a chiropractor in Kalkaska and never shut down. We were told
My
by...
neck's killing me, that's why I looked at him, because we were talking about that earlier.
We were told by the Homeland Security that we were essential. I hate that word. Anyways, but last week, for the first time really in the whole practice, because I won't wear a mask, I don't have my stupid little lines on the floor. I hope I'm not live right now. Anyways, I don't have a sign on my door because I know they're not healthy. I have, biology degree. I know that what we're doing is not going to be healthy.
My chiropractor tells me the same thing.
Right, right. So I had a gal confront me about not having the mask last week, and then post that I'm not wearing a mask. And then, so for the first time, and I could use prayers too, but for the first time I actually really became strong enough to say, you just put my license in jeopardy by doing that. And now I won't be able to provide care for you. How is that going to feel? You've been coming in my office the whole time. One day you'll wear it, the next day you won't, the next time you do, the next time you don't. But now you've put me in jeopardy, and I will not be able to care for my community, whom I've cared for 23 years. And she went, oh my gosh, I didn't know that the health department could come in and revoke your license like that.
Not legally, but they're doing it.
Not legally, but they're doing it. And so there are so many people that could use your support, so many providers that could use your support as well, because they're afraid. They're afraid to give you a service that they want to give you, but they're afraid to not be able to give it as well. And so they also need your prayers. I mean, I couldn't even go in and get my eyes checked. I can't read anymore, and I couldn't go get my eyes checked because I won't wear a mask.
Yeah, I'm going on a 4-year-old prescription for my contacts at this point.
Right, right. So
I wasn't going to wear a mask to get a new.
So more and more people need to just be able to stand up and also say, look, you're going to have to provide a service for me, and yeah, that this isn't going to work. But yeah, I'm still afraid that I might not be able to. But most of my patients, I've said, well, I guess I'll just take care of you at my garage if they tell me I don't have a license. So, but anyways, yeah. But thank you for fighting for us.
I would like to say that I can guarantee this, but I am only one person. But you can, if something does happen to you like that, at least try to reach out to me. And if I have, enough hours in a day to be able to do something about it, I absolutely will. I could tell you that my own chiropractor, when he called me with the, I want to say it was Executive Order 2020-147, that was the predecessor to the current 2020-153, that's the current mask order. When that came out, he was like, okay, this is it. I haven't closed, but now I don't know. I can't force this upon people. What do I do? And I promised him that, and now it's in front of people, right? So now I'm bound to it. That I would fight it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court if I needed to, because there's no way that I'm going to let a care provider who's actually trying to provide care for people to be denied that opportunity simply because they don't want to squash somebody's constitutionally protected freedoms.
Well, and the hard part too is we just got a big announcement as well that they're going to be cutting all of a lot of the providers' income anyway, whether it's chiropractors, doctors, whatever, because they've instigated the new telemedicine, and so we're incorporated in that. But I'd like to know how a chiropractor is supposed to do.
Can I finish that sentence? How, when my neck hurts right now, how am I supposed to go on a Zoom call and feel better at the end of that?
Exactly, but my fees are going to all get cut 20% because I'm on that board. So we're going to get even more financial problems and not be able to take care of people.
Right.
So everybody needs to, yeah.
So prayers for our chiropractors and other health professionals that are trying to do the right thing, because if you have not been aware, by the way, there are people who need medical care who are being denied medical care of all kinds simply because they can't wear a mask. And I mean somebody who is so severely disabled and crippled and all kinds of other things that it's obvious to the naked eye why this human is not wearing a mask, and yet they're being denied surgeries that were already scheduled, they're being denied MRIs or x-rays, they're being denied physical therapy, they're being denied every single possible medical treatment.
They're also being denied medical treatment if they won't get a COVID test.
That too. So when we do see providers, the hard part is though, because you don't want the spotlight on you, it's hard for people to say, hey, go to this chiropractor, because they're not enforcing these unconstitutional executive orders. But if you know of a provider in your life who is not doing that, even I'm going to say a store. If you know of a store, or you know the guy that does the oil changes on your car, or whatever, the local gas station that doesn't require, whatever, chiropractor, anything, when they're not choosing not to enforce these unconstitutional executive orders, let's try to make sure our business goes there as much as humanly possible, because we need to stick together. And to pray for them to be able to survive, because many of our small businesses have already closed.
So there's no recourse to that?
For which part?
For her, she can't say, like...
There's no Staples Easy button. Now, there's legal recourse. In fact, I would like to think that there's attorneys already standing there ready and willing to take these kinds of cases on. I certainly am willing, but being one person who already works every single day of the week, I don't have more time that I could just squeeze in, but I'm just triaging. For me, it's a matter of triage. I got to put the biggest fires out first. Hopefully we could start by fixing the fires over here, and then we could do the long-term goal, which is the constitutional amendment. And then one thing I didn't mention, since I do have people going over there. What?
I just wanted to mention that there is a Christian forum, or a Christian board of attorneys up here who will do pro bono work.
Now you're going to have to start over.
I'm sorry. There is a Christian group of attorneys up here. You can call Tom North. He used to be the probate judge up in St. Ignace, and he is affiliated with them. If you need any legal help whatsoever, that obviously Katherine can guide them, or you can ask her questions. I'm more than happy.
So we can advertise that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Anything related to COVID?
Anything related to anything that, if you're a Christian and you need help, please run it by them. And you can, yeah, you'll start beeping on me. So yeah, Tom North is his name, and you can catch him.
I have on his business card, I can put on Facebook to people who need help that are in this area.
Let me ask him about that, because is
Okay.
his cell phone on there?
Well, that's why I want to know what
Okay, for
information-
sure you can catch him at the Republican office. He volunteers there 3 days a week in St. Ignace. He also works at the Sheboygan office. So
you
can get a hold of the Sheboygan RNC office or the St. Ignace one right now. In the meantime, I will get the right contact information, because there's a secretary I know that handles that stuff. But if you have any legal questions, Tom North is always available, like Catherine Henry is. Sometimes it takes a day or two to get a call back, but they're very busy, obviously. So just wanted to help them out with that.
I'm gonna, I didn't know if I was gonna scream at me when you put two of them together, but. So I will, for those of you who might be watching at home and who watch my videos or look on my website, oh my gosh, I haven't even mentioned, all of the information that I've said today and much more is available on my website, which is restorefreedomkh.com. Restorefreedom, K as in Catherine, H as in Henry.com. I have a resources tab that has all kinds of things, government documents, my legal briefs. There's a copy of the Michigan Constitution, the United States Constitution, all kinds of things. So make sure that you take a look at that website. Even if you don't want anything to do with my Restore Freedom Initiative petition, there's still a wealth of information on there, so please check it out. Also, I did find out recently of an attorney who's willing to do criminal defense of cases where it's like a person charged with a COVID-19 offense. And so I put that information on, and so once I get confirmation about Tom's contact information that I have the permission to share, I'll put that on there as well. Was there another?
If I'm in a place of business and they ask me to put on a mask, I tell them I can't for medical reasons, and they say, I'll have to ask you to leave. Can they throw me out?
So number one, legally, no, they can't throw you out. Number two, even the executive order does not allow them to do that, because even the executive order, I believe it's section 2, has a laundry list of exemptions where, by the way, it says nothing about that the person has to give specific information about which exemption it is and how they have that exemption, nor does it allow the person to be questioned about proving that or have some sort of doctor's note or anything like that. In fact, it specifically says a verbal representation from the customer suffices that an exemption would apply.
I was at a store and they accused me of being belligerent and swearing, and they were calling mall cops to throw me out.
That happens on a regular basis to so many people that's one of the biggest things that I don't know how to answer people just yet. And some of those questions I haven't gotten back to people just yet because I don't know what to tell people other than it's not constitutional, it's not legal, it doesn't even follow her pretend executive orders.
The person followed me throughout the whole store, and I still turned around and
That's
said, please don't
harassment.
hassle me. And
That is
they
harassment.
hassled me right out the front door. I was glad to leave after that.
Well, in light of what you just said, Joe, isn't there, like for Walmart, didn't she have a penalty on the businesses that would let people ignore the mask if they didn't enforce it?
Yeah, so
So they're afraid of getting in trouble with the governor.
They are, but they need to learn how to read. I don't have patience for them because that's the first part of the order, and the second part of the order clearly says there's
Yeah.
exemptions and that they don't have the right to be questioning or grilling people. In fact, they can take a mere verbal representation from the customer or client that an exemption applies. So when people read one part of the order and not the other, I want to smack them. I mean, that's my honest answer about that. But
So you have to just stick to your guns and let it play out.
I've often shown the executive order. I either have it in print or I have it on my phone, and I've shown it to people. And even then, a lot of businesses are like, well, they start backpedaling. When I don't even know where I'm at in the state other than somewhere up north. And so when I was, the day that I was all the way up in Laurium, so we drove all night long to get all the way up to Laurium. Do you guys know where Laurium is? No. So you know how I mentioned where I was born? It's past that. And I went there for one of these types of meetings, and gladly so. Anyway, so we talked to people and handed out the petitions and did all kinds of great freedom stuff, right? And then I had to book it all the way down to Petoskey because then that's where the next one was. And I had like a 15-minute window there. So at any rate, we got there, we immediately had the other event in Petoskey, and then misunderstanding, I thought I was going to be eating food there. The food was all packed up by the time I was there and presenting and done talking or whatever. And so anyway, long story short, my family, and I had two of my children with me, and my husband and myself, and we were starving to death. And we didn't have real lunch. We stopped along the way in the UP and grabbed some, like, whatever, Wisconsin cheese and some sausage or something. Anyway, so oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. What was the?
Businesses are afraid of getting in trouble
Thank you.
because
We
they haven't
stopped to go
finished
to a
reading it.
restaurant and waited 45 minutes for a table. They were never going to give us this table. They told us we were going to. We all walked in without masks, didn't tell us I needed masks. When I finally went in and said, hey, the table outside that I want is available now. What's going on? Oh, no, you have to wear a mask. Anyway, long story short, it became this cyclical argument about, well, the executive order says this, and then I say, funny thing is not, read it. Oh, well, I don't need to read it. It's a company policy, and our company's policy says that you have to wear a mask. I'm sorry, you can't have a company policy that discriminates, especially when it comes to, let's just focus on the medical stuff for now. I have 2 disabilities, one that under the executive order allows me to not wear a mask, another disability that allows my family and those with me to not wear a mask for communication purposes because I read lips. And so no matter how you slice it, we're covered even by this unconstitutional executive order. And so if they're going to claim that it's now this company policy, let's put it this way, would it be socially acceptable for them to be able to deny people services or a person services because they have a wheelchair? Or any other commonly accepted disability? Is that acceptable?
Right.
So because I have breathing issues and other kinds of reasons why I can't wear a mask, and I have hearing issues and other disabilities that require those with me to not wear masks, then somehow I'm allowed to be discriminated against, but everybody else isn't. But this is supposed to be the era of let's accept everybody. Love is love, right? We're just going to accept everybody. Well, then love me for who I am and stop trying to put a mask on me when I want to eat some food.
Yeah.
So that's a logistical thing that you have a problem with, though, is that they try to go from executive order to company policy. No company policy can deny you your basic rights to breathe. And no, it's not something that's been argued a lot in courts, and it's all in statutes, and I can prove it. I can prove it because God gave me my right to breathe, and no other private entity or government entity can take that away from me, period.
Okay, just to clarify, does that mean they cannot say that they have the right to not serve you and the cashier will not take your money when you walk up, that the company policy, that's okay for them to do it?
It is not okay for them to do that, but I don't have the Staples Easy button to enforce the wrongdoing at this point because there's so much wrongdoing, and I'm still waiting for all these other attorneys to step up and help me bring it all back into reality. Oh, you guys are going to be easy on me.
Are we good?
Really?
Well, one thing.
Okay.
There was a construction company, there was 3 companies up here in this area that got busted for that tattletale thing that she's got going on where you tell on a business. And one got fined like $1,700. It's Stories Construction. I think it's out of Traverse City.
Okay.
So how do they get fined if there's that we can wear the mask or not have to wear the mask? How can they still get fined then over it?
So what exactly was the scenario?
It has to do with she's got this. She wants people to tell on other people, and that's what they did. These 3 companies got fined because people told on them. And I know the Story Construction.
But
it
told
was
on
either
them for
17
doing what?
or 20.
Social distancing or wearing masks.
They weren't social distancing or wearing masks.
In a place of business.
Yes, it was a place of business. I don't know the whole story, but that must be it.
And so somebody ratted on them, and then they got busted
Right.
by Whitmer?
By the health department or whomever.
Yeah.
That's called mob rule.
It's called mob rule.
Well, what it's called is unconstitutional.
Thank you.
So absolutely, yeah, there's no right for any of those agencies to do it, but they're doing it. And the problem is we have some, not all, some law enforcement officers who are just going, well, this is what we're told to do. We got to enforce these executive orders. We got to enforce these local orders from our local health departments or the most current orders that come out of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services director. No, you don't. We have prosecuting attorneys or local judges from different communities that are, oh yeah, we're going to prosecute these because it's the same as any other crime or misdemeanor or whatnot. Breathing fresh air is not a misdemeanor. In fact, I cited cases from our U.S. Supreme Court and our Michigan Supreme Court that very clearly said exercising a constitutionally protected right cannot be turned into a criminal action, period. But that's exactly what they've done. In the same breath where we have people that are downtown in Detroit and Grand Rapids rioting and burning businesses and cars and police units and all kinds of other things and committing criminal actions like that, then that's okay. But people who simply want to walk into a grocery store and buy groceries without wearing a mask are deemed and labeled and treated as criminals. This is not okay. It's not legal. It's not constitutional. It's not biblical. It's going to take us standing up and doing something about it. Everybody. It's not going to take attorneys fixing it. I'm going to keep doing what I need to do, don't get me wrong, but I can't do it by myself. I need help. I need we, the people, to work with me on this and hold them all accountable.
We all need to get together and step up, and no matter Democrat or whatever,
Right.
we need to unite
Yes.
and get our country back, is what we
Yeah.
got.
Yes, we need to do.
They had a Trump rally here in a town that's just not too far from here, and they listed it as a protest, because that's the only way they could have the rally. They couldn't call it a rally. My voice carries enough that I don't
Well, I think just in case people
Not
are
for deaf
following the
people.
question.
There's a Trump rally in Boyne City, but they had to call, when they listed it on Facebook as a protest. So I asked them, I'm not going to attend no protest. Why are you calling it a protest? We have to call it a protest
They
because
don't.
the governor won't allow us
It's
to have
people
it.
cowering to what there's nothing in there. In fact, they need to figure out, let's see, our state constitution, that whole section 1 that I was telling you about. Section 3, the people have the right peaceably to assemble, to consult for the common good, to instruct their representatives, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Well, that doesn't say anything about protest. And it says in here, Article 1, Section 5, every person may freely speak, write, express, and publish his views on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of such right. No law shall be enacted to restrain or abridge the liberty of speech or of the press. Those are just two, and that's just in our state constitution. We have similar rights as categorized and protected by our United States Constitution. You don't have to call it a protest versus a rally or vice versa. That's when people are afraid and they don't want to push, they don't want to tick off the wrong people, and they're just playing the political game. And quite frankly, I'm just as angry with them as I am with the people that are trying to do this to us to begin with. Just stand up and exercise your constitutionally protected rights that are given to you by God, and don't play games with the names and the wording and all that. Just exercise your rights and do it respectfully and do it peacefully and do it the way that God would want you to, but don't play their game. This isn't a political game. This is our freedom we're talking about here. So they didn't have to do any of that.
Well, I still went there, whatever you want to call it, but I didn't like the way.
Well, I wouldn't say don't go or not go. I'm just saying they don't have to call it something just because.
That just,
Right.
yeah.
I know somebody's got a question. I can feel it. No other questions? I knew it. See? I felt it.
I got one question. I work at a parts store, and it's a corporate store, and they say, well, if you don't wear a mask, you can't work. What do you do with that?
That's hard. Again, that is another one of those things where I don't have a Staples Easy button for, and I really wish I did, because they don't have the right to do that. But I guess I could give you the lawyer answer. Well, you file a lawsuit, and then in about 18 to 24 months, it might be resolved through the court system, and then by then you wouldn't have had food on your table this whole time and everything else. I don't know what to tell you there. Do you compromise on your values in order to feed your family? I don't know what to tell you. Honestly, that is not an easy answer, and I don't have the answer for you. But stay connected with my Facebook page and with my website, and as I have answers on that, I will definitely be providing those. So one of the things I'm going to hopefully get to work on very soon is something for businesses to post so that they can acknowledge that there's these executive orders, but that those executive orders even have their own provisions for people to not have to wear the masks and things like that. Also, for people to be able to have, not address all the unconstitutionality or anything like that, but just be able to walk around and hand a business something without having to verbally engage or remember how to, exercise their rights. And then certainly I plan on putting something together that gives the whole argument together, basically, of how all of that, let's just pick on the mask mandates, how that violates so many different things within God's law and man's law that there's no way that should be enforced. But unfortunately, that takes a little bit of time, and it took me 3 hours to get here and 3 hours to be here and 3 hours to drive home, and, you know, I have to eat dinner somewhere in between there, but. Any other questions? Yes.
Is the recall
Hold on one second.
pursuant?
Let's wait just in case, I don't know.
That's a short question. Is the recall petition we're pursuing?
Well, that's up to you. Now, what you need to know about the recall is that, I believe, let me double check here, because I've said a lot of things today. I want to say, yes, Article 5, Section 26 of our state constitution is very clear about the succession of power for a governor. Whether she dies in office, whether she, whether she resigns, whether she is impeached, whether she's recalled, if she's not in office anymore, the Constitution is very clear that once she is recalled, the lieutenant governor takes that position. So, do you want the lieutenant governor to be in that position? Are you trying to reach me? No. Okay. Saw somebody waving, just wanted to make sure. So do you want the lieutenant governor to be in that position? So the thing is, no, I don't think the lieutenant governor should be our governor. And people have talked about recalling him. Well, then we'll just recall him. Well, here's the thing. Our laws are set up so that we could recall all of them right now. The succession is, if the governor is not available, it goes to the lieutenant governor. Then it goes to the Secretary of State. Then it goes to the Attorney General. Then it goes to the statute. And then the statute says it's the Senate Majority Leader, which is Mike Shirkey, and then it would go to Lee Chatfield, the Speaker of the House. Okay. So people have said, well, let's get rid of all 6 of them. Okay, great. But the time has come and gone for that, because the way that our law works and the timing of different things, the governor would be the only chance to recall her would be in a May 2021 election, because it can only be in a certain time for election. They can't just like make an election in January, right? A May 2021 election. So the question before the people will simply be, should Gretchen Whitmer be recalled from the office of governor, yes or no? If a majority of people vote yes, then that's it, and Gilchrist becomes governor. Now, for Gilchrist, who's our lieutenant governor, or the Secretary of State or the Attorney General, if they're going to be recalled from those positions, that would go on the August 2021 ballot. So then let's say we're going to do he wouldn't be removed from his office until after he was no longer in that office and he was already serving as governor, and then he can't be recalled from an office he's no longer serving. So, and the thing is, you can't recall in the last year of their term, of a 4-year term. So then you can't recall in the whole year of 2021. So.
Now, I saw I don't know if it was Facebook or the news, that bird thing, that they got enough signatures for the recall for her.
Oh, yeah, they did.
But they got to count the signatures in their.
Recall hasn't even started getting signatures yet.
It's a 1945.
Oh, the 1940, oh, okay.
Yeah, the recall has not started getting any signatures yet.
Oh, so it's.
My understanding is they're going to start October 10th was what I've heard. And our organization might be trying to work with them on things like Election Day, just to, a lot of our circulators are interested in circulating their petition and our petition on Election Day and sitting out at polling places so that people, as they come to vote, they can decide to sign both petitions. So that may be an option for people.
So the amendment that you have over there that you're working on,
Yep.
if that got in, then that would eliminate a whole lot of stuff that we've just been talking about.
It sure would.
So that would be a top priority, is what I'm thinking.
That's why I would think that it would be a top priority, because yes, if my amendment goes through, then the 1945 law is gone, the 1976 law is gone, the bad parts of the public health code are gone. In fact, the recall wouldn't be necessary anymore, because any government official who is intentionally violating the Constitution will be held accountable for a misdemeanor on the first offense and a felony on the second offense, and automatically removed from office on the second offense. So there's no need in time and expense for a recall effort to take place. No signatures needed at all. They need just shy of 1.2 million signatures to get the recall. That's a lot. And they have 60 days to do that in. So a recall is going to take a lot of people moving in a lot of different ways all over across the state of Michigan, and you know it's just a lot. But it's not that it can't be done. And so people that just want to send a message and they want to make sure that, you know, let's just, even if we don't even get to vote on it for whatever reason, if we can turn in 1.2 million signatures to the state that, you know, the people of Michigan said enough is enough, no more. It just depends on, is it worth your time to do that? You know what I mean?
How many signatures do you need?
I need 425,059 signatures that are valid. So my goal is 450,000 signatures, because we have about between a 3 and a 6% error rate of people, meaning people that sign it that maybe weren't registered to vote when they thought they were, or they signed under, you know, Kent County, but they're actually registered to vote in Ottawa County, or they got married a couple of years ago and totally forgot to update their voter registration somehow, or whatever the scenario is. I do not have the number right now. Yeah. And why I can tell you that is, unlike the other groups, specifically with Unlock Michigan, they have, I don't know, about $1 million of funds that have been donated, and they have a lot of people that they're paying to collect signatures, but also they have people that they're paying just to work on the effort. I have 0 people that I'm paying. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm living on donations. Not a single one of my volunteers, including the couple or so that are here tonight, they're not paid at all. We can't even afford to do like a mileage reimbursement or anything like that. Everything, in fact, all the things that we're selling over there, I forgot to mention that we do have a table where we're selling things. It's all at cost because we want to get the name out there, and people were asking, do you have something I could throw on my car? So we have two different kinds of magnets for your car. We have 2 different kinds of window clings that can go on a car or a regular house window or business window. We have pocket constitutions, because we want everybody to read the Constitution. All the stuff we have is for sale is just at cost. Whatever our cost is, we're passing that along to you. So if people want to donate, I figure they'll hit the donate button or write a check. I'm not trying to earn money off of trying to get the name out there. So anyway, because of all that, and because it's totally 100% grassroots, we just don't have enough volunteers that are there, because we're validating more signatures too than Unlocked did. Their philosophy, from my understanding, is to take basically what the Secretary of State is in theory going to do, which is take 500 here and there, and then spot check those basically. And so that's what they were doing. We have validated between 25 and 30,000 signatures at this point, because and we're nowhere near done. I'm very strategic. We're going to have signatures validated in every single county. Not 100%, but we're going to have signatures validated in every single county. And in the counties where they're known to have more problems, or we've seen by validating this many that they have problems, we're going to increase the percentage of signatures that we're validating. So at this point, I'd rather focus on getting the signatures and validating them than spending all the time to count them as they continuously come in. So I know people like numbers, but that's the hard and fast truth about why I don't have the numbers. Any other questions?
So, everybody, if you're interested, make your way over to that table over there. And John, can you give me some redneck music and mute Catherine's mic so she can do whatever she's got to do? I think she's hungry too.
I just want to say thank you again to all of you, especially those of you that stuck it out this long to hear all the question and answer. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm still going door to door.
I don't know.
It's going to crack if I shut it off.